Yeah, so if you didn't know, so last Thursday, which is the same day I presented last week, the FDA announced their annual list for AI ML devices. So what this basically means is these 171 ones have been kind of in the pipeline. I think they're technically approved, they're just not public yet. And so I'll be going over that and then the practicality of quantum inspired as well. It's good to see everybody on. So this is new 2022 FDA annual approvals and QiML practical applications for discussion 106. And this is Thursday, October 26, 2023. My name is Kevin Krawczyk. So the big thing with this is you can't go at all of them at the same time. It's better from a quality perspective and just understanding these is to take a chunk. So what I did here is basically we'll take a look at the three of the more recent GEs. So this is basically a CT spine, it's a computed tomography spine, cardiac MRI, and then this pneumothorax, which is converted from just looking at bones to more of a chest X-ray application here. Now, the second one is a more historical review, but it does have a new one. So I'm going to cover three of the Apple FDAs, and then also this PCCP, this predetermined change control plan. It's basically it's the new way of doing things, the FDA's way. And then last, looking at quantum inspired, so it's basically classical with quantum physics. A lot of times you don't even need another device unless you have, heavy RAM requirements, those types of things. So here it is. So actually, it took me by surprise because before I was waiting for it to change last week, it never did. And so it actually changed the same day on Thursday that I gave the talk. Now, obviously looking for the new approvals and kind of what sticks out with this. Now, if you didn't catch the discussion last week, I'll catch you up on a little bit. A former FDA commissioner, and I believe his name's Scott Golia, he basically said LLMs should be, in this running for FDA approvals. And by that, what basically it means is that you have LLMs that are trained on all types of data in the world. A medical LLM would be something smaller, a smaller training data set, but similar in size, I believe, as far as performance. And this could be something that could take in patient orders, way before you would see, or it would listen to a patient, you or I, whoever, a user, and then help to direct calls, these types of things, but in a much more effective way to basically get the patients that need the most help to the doctor's office right away. So no LLMs for this year so far, up until this October 19th update. That we could still have some the rest of the year. I don't know how sure that is, but basically we wouldn't find out, I think, officially until next year. So again, this is a once-in-a-year list, this annual list. And again, I was looking for charts and see if anybody made some, they released three sets of, pieces of data with this. And this is the first one. So this is year over year increase of FDA AI ML enabled devices. So it's basically, even though like in 2022, it dropped from 2021 a little bit, it still increased over it, right? So it had a positive, so if it was like, say, 0%, I believe that would be the same exact, number of devices as the previous year. So you see in 2023 projected, so we're partway through it, and the annual report basically includes a portion of this. And they're saying 30% or plus, or even more than that than the prior year, which is 2022, which is settled. Okay, so all the 2022, it makes sense, are represented with this bar here. It's a year over year. It's not, just that year. And then same thing, the charts haven't come out. So it takes people a week or two to go through these. And I went ahead and made my own. So you'll see for radiology, so 122 of these devices are radiology. That represents 87% of all the ones between this time frame of mid 2022, or actually this is all 2022. The 87% of all approved medical devices for AI and ML are radiology. They also did say that they get more submissions for radiology. So it's not like they're picking, which ones they're choosing. So this includes like medical images. And you'll see cardiovascular, which is Apple's, representing 7% of all submissions in 2022. And basically the rest of them either having two or a single, approval during this time frame. So, and this is all brand new news. It came out exactly a week ago. Now you can see the ones for January through, so this is basically January through July. So it's this year up to date. And then you have here a better representation. So resume share. So, and feel free, it looked like there was like maybe a pause in the last one. Maybe from, dragging this bar. But basically, this is the one for 2022, mostly radiology. Going on to the next one, this is everything for this year, January through July of 2023. And you'll see, so 79% radiology, 9% cardiovascular, 5% neurology. And you see the spread is a lot better, so far this year. And I think they do keep eye on this to a certain extent, so you wouldn't want just one category, getting all of the approvals, which things can trend towards that direction. So it looks like a better spread for this year. And then, so basically, if you look for headlines now, this is what you'll see. And I don't know how these manifest. So they say GE Healthcare tops FDA's AI-enabled medical device authorization list. There isn't too much other kind of in-depth, because you can go in-depth into each PDF of all the 171s, where I just, basically did four of the new ones. And, so there's going to be some news, with this, and then somebody will find something that is more of significance. And like I said, it won't be anything like an LLM or, quantum algorithm, those types of things, quantum simulated. But, it's GE, has the most approvals during this time period. So both Seeking Alpha and then Medical Device Network both showed that. And it's usually by some degree. And a lot of times they'll have two approvals that are kind of like butting up against each other. So this is the first GE approval that I'll focus on. So this is CT Spine AutoView. And it also does labeling and disc detection. So the big thing with this is basically it's non-invasive. And you'll hear the term auto a lot in approvals. You hear it for auto segmentation or auto, reconstruction. So this is saying automatic generation of anatomically focused multiplanar reformats, right? So this would probably be something that the doctors would want, in the hospital. And then you'll see in C automatically exports results to predetermined DICOM as standards. That one's more, kind of common. But you'll see here they did this disc detection as well. And they said it's for multiple diseases and, not only for trauma, but for oncology, routine exams, these types of things. So this was an interesting one. So here's the second of the GE. So this is basically, they call it Sonic DL. Anytime you see DL, it's deep learning based image reconstruction technique. And they say it's for their 1.5s or their 3.0 Tesla MR systems. And what separates this one is basically they say you can have highly undersampled cardiac data. So I believe this is like you either don't have enough data or you want to take it quicker. And these terms, undersampled, limited number scans are usually associated with the second half, highly accelerated acquisitions. There's other, FDA approvals that basically you can get limited number of MRI scans with similar quality and it takes less time. So they say their acceleration factor goes from, predicate devices like 2 to 4 up to 12. I think if the conditions are met right there. So the last one for GE, Now they go by GE Healthcare. They go by GE Healthcare in different countries. All three of these are GE Medical Systems, and sometimes there's a little bit extra to the name with that. So this is a repurposed algorithm. So before it was for bones, and now it's for this pneumothorax chest X-ray. So they want to try as hard as they can to avoid refiling a 510K. And, that process takes money. And more importantly, I think it takes time. So in this case, actually, this is a new 510K, but the predicate device already exists. So that's the part that didn't take too long. And you'll see these, packs on premise, on cloud. These are very similar types of formats that physicians use in hospitals. Are there any questions at this point as far as the GE stuff, GE Medical Systems? I saw somebody else come on too as well. And if you just caught this week and it's just like, you're just seeing basically the approval letters. Last week, I went over 3 of the key, and they still stand. They're basically guidance into the FDA, and I had 3 different experts, or they spoke before I presented, and I reported on what they had said about the FDA and AI and ML. So those are available too. But yeah, this is the GE part here. So going to be going into Apple, and there's a number of companies that just, they're just a little bit newer. I think Apple got in maybe 9 years ago, in healthcare, and a huge impact. Many people were wearing watches, getting all types of data. Did you have a question? Did somebody have a question? So basically with these, it's showing a heart rate here, the speeds per minute, but like the next step up is basically atrial fibrillation. So, looking at the different peaks in between, each heart rate and like the significance of that. So here's a quote, and you'll find this so Apple has 4 approvals. So it says, Apple FDA-approved software opportunistically analyzes pulse rate data to identify episodes of irregular heart rhythm suggestive of AFib. It's a condition. Now, it's not the same as a doctor's visit, and it exceeds in some areas because you can get this, it's called longitudinal data away from the hospital, as much as the patient wants to give, as long as they're not moving too much. But you'll hear this momentarily does this opportunistically, right? So most people are active, like they're moving around. And I think at one point in the beginning, I think it did it'll take 4, good scans while people are more stable, that are not moving their arms as much in order for it to pick up. So you'll see in this specific one, this is the first. So this is Apple's first FDA approval. So as you might expect, if you're doing a mobile application of a technology for medical that works with a cell phone and your watch, and it's built into the watch, in fact, you're going to need a de novo request, which means from scratch. So in these cases, this photoplethysmograph detects volumetric blood changes, okay? So the patents are all about the software and the technology, this PPG, this has been existing for a long time. It's a good technology. It does just that. It detects volumetric blood changes. And the IRNF has to do with the atrial fibrillation. So at this stage, it's IRNF, I think 1.0. I don't know if there's any other 1 dots. So it's basically detecting irregular heart rhythms, right? So it's not just blood pulse, it's kind of like, this algorithm is more sophisticated than that. And as I showed before, they use this word opportunistically, I think in most, if not all of the approvals, these FDA approvals. And then you also get, you're collecting the data as you want, right? So you can send it to your doctor, but your doctor does not have to be there with you. It's just, people know this who wear an Apple Watch. It's just, you have extra medical data on yourself. And they say it stops at the point of detecting heart attacks. As far as technology may be there, I'm not sure, but like they're not saying that it can be used for that. And what was interesting about this particular approval is NIH published earlier the same month. This is not part of I don't think it was part of the approval, but the sensor review that the hardware technology was good, and basically it's a good go ahead for a mobile device. So that was back in 2018. And that seems like forever ago. If you ever have known people who've worn watches, these things, it was a while ago. Now, the update to this is the IRNF 2.0. So this is the next approval, and this is on October 26, 2021. And basically with this one, better sensitivity, better specificity. And the predicate device, meaning the device before this, is the software application for the de novo of the previous slide that I just showed you, which is common, right? You're building off your own product. It is very more common than, starting over and, picking a new manufacturer, those types of things. Now, Apple is one of the first that I've seen that actually tells the type of deep learning neural network. In this case, it's a convolutional neural network. This could be something like a ResNet. It could be smaller, but ResNet 18, ResNet 50, it could be different types of convolutional neural nets. Now, they said that for the study, they did over 2,500 subjects, 3 million pulse rate recordings, so basically IRNF 2.0, more research behind it to try to get this, basically a better performing algorithm. Are there any questions at this point regarding the Apple stuff? So this is halfway through the Apple approvals here. And again, this was in the past. This is 2021, and then I'll be coming up on 2 more. And so this next one is they call it AFib burden, or it's like a historical view. And the thing that's different about this, I'm not sure if the previous ones, but for sure this one was over the counter. I'm not quite sure about the other two, the de novo and then the other 510K. Now, basically what this says is that it provides a measure of the amount of time spent in AFib, right? So it's advanced diagnostics of what exactly the algorithm's going through. And this can be used with people that have a diagnosis of AFib, this medical, issue. And, it works both with the Apple Watch and the iPhone with the app, with the health app. But again, like all of these, this software, AI ML software that we're talking about. So this has kind of like established hardware technology is, it's a different type of medical device in that it's somewhat more powerful because it's collecting data all the time, and it can help you go to the hospital if you need to, but it's not meant to be a replacement. It's, as far as the technical details and sensitivities and specificities, you'll probably get your best results in the doctor's room. So my guess in the next 5 to 10 years, it'll be more fine tuning of this. It's like, okay, this is like really important that we get this healthcare data from you with your watch. Just make sure you find some time to sit down, 4 times out of the day, that type of stuff. Okay, so this last one is basically, they say it's predetermined change control plan. Now, my take on this, because I didn't find too much else in this approval, and it wasn't too long, is I think it's Apple's trying to mold it into FDA's, these standard terms with PCCP, and then you also have an SPS and ACP and these types of things. And it's a somewhat complex system, so I wasn't quite sure as far as like other updates. Now, they also say for this, it includes adjusting the tachogram numerical threshold feature. When you're reading these approvals, you can either get information like, say, from the main abstract. It's 4 pages down. There's always some letterhead stuff before that. And there's charts, usually towards the bottom. And the other one says it includes modification to number of sequential tachograms. Now, that's not completely, I would have to do additional research with that. But I think the main thing with this is it seems to be, to its own benefit too, of gaining the FDA's predetermined change control plan, PCCP, which involves other things with the algorithm and the lifetime of the algorithm and the changes that you can make even after it's on the market, right? Like a lot of these are they're not fixed for sure. Okay, so that's it for Apple, and feel free to put it in the chat. I see there's a couple comments. So one of them being, I believe Samsung has similar approval. And some of them, there's Samsung Tizen and there's Google Fit. I think that Apple's kind of made the first kind of like foray into health with mobile. And there are some Samsung approvals. I just wasn't quite sure if it was for, mobile or if this is something for the hospital, more like stationary. So I think that these 4 from Apple are definitely off to a great start. I think a lot of people rely and depend on it. And without me not knowing how that interaction between getting data and how many people actually, follow up with their, physician or primary care provider, it seems like a lot of people are liking this transition to adding more, control to the computers, like in our cell phones and in our watches, in addition to the medical devices that we have in the hospitals too. So it's not like anything's replacing anything. It's just like, it's helping doctors get better data, and people like to be, how do you say that, like responsible for their health, those types of things. Anything else? And so quantum algorithms for DNA analysis is exciting. Quantum DNA stuff is fun. Yeah. So we'll get through. So this is a little different. So this is the quantum portion. And the reason why I talk about this is because there's a line between emerging technologies and existing technologies. I consider QiML, or quantum inspired machine learning, to be an existing technology. I've personally modified, 26 of Penny Lane's demos. I've done 12 of Qiskit's, and it's basically it's quantum physics with bits, classical bits is how I describe that. Now, I want to make sure with this, because I bring this up a lot, and even if you don't have the strongest machine learning, AI background, this will help make sense a little bit. Now, this first one on the top is basically you have weights and biases, okay? So you have a neural network, and these weights over the course of, mini batches and epochs, these keep getting changed to different values. Okay, so some might get, frozen at some point, but for the most part, the values, at epoch 30 represent, the best configuration of these, weights in order to get the lowest losses and the highest accuracies for machine learning. So that's typically how it's done. And sometimes, yes, you can, like 27 is better than 30 on your epoch. And I'm talking about running computer notebooks right now. Now, the way that it works in quantum, and where I'll see, we should see a lot more innovation with this, especially with, quantum algorithms specifically meant for quantum simulators, is you have an original. So the left one, these are both a single qubit. So the left one, you have a certain rotation on it. And then at a different time, it's a parameter, the rotation on the qubit changes. Now, in this case, this new rotation angle would correspond similarly to the top one, where you would get lower losses and higher accuracies due to this angle being in a more favorable position. Now, this process happens in the same exact ways with loss functions and atom optimizers, choose your own optimizer to set the rotations on the qubits. So there's really not a ton more steps that you're doing in quantum world, simulated quantum world, that you're doing in classical. And in fact, I've run demos that do both of these. I traditionally would fix these values, and then my quantum algorithm would, get updated, and, the rotations or optimized after every single epoch, those types of things. So it's a classical data generating, classical processing method. So if you could just imagine that if you didn't have much of a problem and many qubits, that you can actually do classical algorithms and quantum algorithms on the same device. So what's traditionally done, because the quantum algorithms do require more RAM, you'll see this down here, is that you can have a separate quantum device like a lightning.qubit or lightning.gpu or qiskit.air, those types of things. But if you have, it's theoretically possible, and this has been done before, to run PennyLane on a laptop, and it does both classical algorithms, quantum algorithms, using the same type of BLAS, so basic linear algebra subroutines. So this is matrix, vector calculations, and the qubits just, you're doing it differently because you have quantum physics, and you've essentially simulated a qubit perfectly, inside. It's just, the other issues is RAM, and then a greater understanding of the data set, with the qubits there too. So I made some analogies with it. So it's basically bits behaving according to quantum mechanics to make qubits. Okay, so that's like a pile of qubits that you have, say 15, I don't know. And then some bits are still needed for the notebook, and some bits are for simulating qubits. And I could add in there too, some bits are also designated for a classical deep learning neural network, and then others are for quantum algorithm. So if you have the algorithm before the classical neural net or afterwards. And they're free of noise. And the big thing is they're compatible with today's machine learning workflows. So there's no, is this, we have efficient differentiation methods using simulated qubits called adjoint differentiation, or you can use back propagation. You can get the answers right away. You don't have to wait a bunch of shots in order to get an answer that's not an exact answer. And it's basically just adding quantum physics to it all, but we've created this framework of quantum simulators. It looks different, but in reality, what they say in these discussion forums, the ones that hold it for, like say, for instance, like PennyLane, is it's it's very, very similar to the BLAS that we're experiencing with today's machine learning. So in all these things, and you can go multi-threaded CPU. More commonly, you'll see multi-node. So this is like, if you have, I'll show you in this next slide, actually with B here, PennyLane, NVIDIA, NERSC scaling up, 256 GPUs, Perlmutter CPU. These are A100s, which are, top of the line industrial GPUs. But I think what it is like, and I'll be doing this too, these types of exercises, is if you wrote down on a piece of paper how close we are to advancing performance using quantum inspired machine learning. And I think most people say, well, you're probably a little bit ahead with performance, and we're using this old algorithm structure, called, this gate model, that was just meant to be back compatible with, hardware. So why don't we just super get into quantum simulator algorithms only for that? And you can even change quantum physics. You can do all this cool stuff in order to get, your better performance. Now, the other side of that is, this is like brand new utilities we're talking. Like if you're just processing regular data now with quantum physics in a way that's never been done before, you're talking like these, new utility. So anyways, if you do with, I don't know if people will come over basically from hardware to QiML, just because the amount of time and effort, but I do see people coming from deep learning, which are actually more than any of these fields in quantum, just because it's not that hard to teach, quantum algorithms, and they could say, oh, we don't have that, I don't understand it, but it makes sense here. So, it's those types of things, and I've related this before. If we're basically with QiML, like 1998 Lynette, this is like MNIST was like the big chore. And we're heading towards, in my opinion, to like a 2012 AlexNet. So that's more like your ImageNet, 1,000 classes, many, many images. And I wouldn't say that, we're at that stage efficiently with hybrid or just quantum algorithm, that type of stuff. So, it's important, right? Because even if we had a noise-free quantum computer, we still would need an efficient differentiation method. And we would still need a way to get the exact states. Like ML workflows, they're updated over time. So quantum computers will be good at huge problems, right? Huge problem, you solved it. But with QML, like all of these, like CPUs and GPUs, they're readily accessible to everybody. So even though we're not going to be at that huge, thousands qubits in a couple of years, likely with quantum simulators, we're in the workflow of machine learning. And then, we can get that accuracy very likely, and we can get new utility very likely. So I wanted to open it up here. Does anybody have questions on any of the slides? So I covered FDA, and then so GE, and then Apple, and then so this QiML stuff here too. And there's a good paper on this that is in the deck as well, and I can provide if you'd like. So, it's definitely an exciting area. And I would say I think with deep learning, they get spooked because we spook them. You don't understand the RX, RY, RZ, and circuits, when in reality, we might not even be using that specific type of, algorithm. So, it's like, I don't know, I just see the potentials there. It's just, even with some of the platforms, you fall in love with the gate model, and it's convenient. Before transpiling, we can understand it, but I think to truly tap in with like understanding like the data set and the algorithm, we're going to have to switch to non-gate model, and then just start running tests and develop a new method.
Hey, Kevin.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in these approvals for like Apple and, like these personal medical devices, are they getting a certification on some different level? Is it like it's approved for screening level medical diagnostic? Is it, or I mean, are they like are they telling the providers they can rely on that data, or they just rely it as, or they can only rely on it as like pre-screening information and they have to take it further?
I mean, as far as I know, the main thing that people don't know is not everything has to be FDA approved. So say, for instance, I know a lot of like classification stuff today. I don't think, the FDA really goes after it. They're more after reconstruction and segmentation algorithms. But when you get down to this level, and the FDA is the only way to do it, and it's like the core technology, that you want approved. What I see is like IEC, ISO, NEMA. There's other ASTM. These types of things. Usually, the FDA will require that you've passed those certifications in order to submit to FDA. Now, as far as like the clinical trials and stuff, you typically see them, especially if it's a new device, and you always want to be the best at going about it that you can. So number of subjects, and do these things, is it like heavily biased to one geographic area? And you kind of, I believe the FDA has good machine learning practices. So they say for instance, like your training set and your testing set should come from two different places. Okay. And we do this all the time, that we have a single data set, we just split it, like train, 0.8, and then test 0.2. So yeah, I think it's part of a lot of things, but like, yeah, I think so there's rules and regulations which are like hard and fast. Now there's guidelines and principles which you better follow, or I don't think you're going to get approved. It's not really like, they're not really, you have to do them still. So, that, I mean, if I understand your question correctly, they want to do the very best clinical trials that they can in order for the, submission to look like it, belongs to be approved. And as far as other bodies before that, I'm not sure, because you had mentioned some of these other ones, but I know the ones that FDA requires. I don't think it's the one that you specifically mentioned, but it's just they're I, it's under a bunch of things, but it sounds like your question is more like, I don't think it has to be FDA approved. And then what other routes would you have to take with your clinical data to prove something else?
Well, you had displayed some recent approvals that like Apple got, right? So are that's for their personal devices that collect personal medical um telemetry, so to speak. So what I'm wondering is maybe the FDA is saying this thing is good enough to be a screening device, and if it goes off, contact your doctor, and
Yeah,
the doctor can look at it. But if it's something like a cardiac problem, the doctor is not going to jump right in and send you to the cath lab, right? They're probably going to do additional testing. So
yeah.
I'm just wondering if there's different levels of diagnostic approval, or why even Apple would go for something like that, I guess. So
Yeah. So like I
I mean, it
think
would make sense. There would be multiple levels. So I'm just asking.
yeah, like they have, say for instance, with lack of better terms, like you're staying in your lane. So if you have like a notification only device, and if you want to go like straight to like a, final diagnosis decision, that's probably going to require, like, there's ways of not even having to file a new 510K, those types of things. But it just sounds like it's just like common sense in some of these things, because you're trying to weigh everything. And if you're brand new to the medical market, and that's what you're going for, is like, diagnosis, like, the software algorithm has final say, is that that's going to take a lot longer, and it's going to be harder, as opposed to something that's just notification only. Some event happens and it dings up, but it's like an aid to the doctor.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense to me. I mean, it's obviously not. Otherwise, it has to compete with like a in clinic EKG or ECG machine, right? Or
Yeah, and I
something
think the
like that. But
market, yeah, the market is, there's room for a lot of these things. And you know if you don't know, I was just run over by a car last Friday. I broke two of my arms. And there's always more room for AI and ML. And it's kind of like when it's pressing, right? Like, so many people, those things. Now I think the CTs, these types of things, is that they have some levels of AI to them. And there's software companies like Subtle Medical that goes around and upgrades the algorithm, and now you only need to take like a couple scans instead of like 10, like a fraction of the scans to get the same image quality. So yeah, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I don't see the issue being like, you know yeah, like there's just like pushing out and stuff, but I haven't experienced it yet. I'm more, I just read all the approvals. Um,
well,
yeah, but can I,
sorry to hear about your misadventure. the way you said it sounded a little funny. You said you broke two of your arms. Do you have
Yeah,
more than two? Do you have more than two arms or?
yeah. I guess most people just
Sorry.
get like, one or those types of things, but it's just
Well, I hope
hard
you
for,
scored some good pain meds at least, if you have to go through that crap.
yeah, they say if your mind is focused, my mind's focused, so I don't, it's not much of a concern. As opposed to just like sitting and waiting to be healed. But yeah, it's nice, get out and
As
walk
long,
around and these
and
types
as
of things.
long as it doesn't hurt to laugh, you're doing okay, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. This startup has been on a mission for, I wouldn't say I started it in October 21, but, you know, more so and even more so in the recent months, just whatever it takes to get, things done. So there's the reason why I bring up the last part about the quantum algorithms is like I said, I've run most of the Penny Lane ML ones, and I've run the Qiskit ones, and you just get that feel of kind of like where you're at, with the quantum algorithms, and if there's other classical, effect with it. And it's just like, it's just about as good or better, and they've said for the longest time, gate model algorithms and like the algorithms that we use, in these pain lane models, they were actually meant to be backwards compatible with hardware, but with the restrictions with noise and at least three other things, I don't see a quantum machine learning workflow in any soon upcoming years from hardware. So, there's a lot to overcome there. And even if you just looked at noise, some people don't think we'll be noise free for over 5 years, um, but yeah, I mean, it's all just rooms for improvement. And, like I said, it does get old if you're running the same architecture. It's like running like the Linnet when I'm trying to get to AlexNet, but everything is based on this original, RX, RY, RZ, that kind of theory. But we're trying to understand like how exactly these data sets move, in a more sophisticated way, those types of things. But I don't know, because there could be a slowdown with it, right? With QML, with new utilities and better performance too. So there's a number of people that we haven't heard from yet, and I know at least one was a speaker. So I would be interested to see your take on this with the FDA and everything with what's going on with quantum. And Ron could keep talking too. It's fine, but like. So Berend or Han or D-Wall, do you have anything?
Nothing specific. It's like 4 a.m. for me, so I really enjoyed it. And would love to participate further. But yes, thank you so much for the detailed explanations of FDA devices. Yes.
Yeah, you're welcome. And so Berend, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Kevin. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good. Thank you. Obviously, at my place, it's quite late. That's why you don't really see me very often. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it's probably a long time before we see real applications. I've been getting on with my BERT project, the one I presented in August last year.
Okay.
We've done a grant, and we've done some test runs. Basically, we had a quantum layer on top of the transformer stack, but I mean, it doesn't make a big difference. I mean, I think and also I think the data are very important because this is a pre-trained network, you see. So you're doing just the fine tuning, and we now have there's a second model, a BERT2 model, which comes with a reference genomics data set, which I've been using for the last few weeks. And I find that at best, the quantum model just does as bad or as good as the conventional model. But the data sets seem to be the limiting factor because some of these data sets are probably poor. So you get very low Matthews MCCs, Matthews correlation coefficients, and it doesn't really change. So you would It could also be that the pre-training limits the ability of the final quantum layer to sort of improve on those data. So, I mean, what I found, a lot of interesting questions come out of it, which are unanswered. And I hope that maybe in a month or 2 months, I can present some of the data, either here or somewhere else, because we're going to probably get a paper out of it. We've also run we have done some classical stuff as well, because what we've done, we have split the project in a quantum arm and a classical arm. So then it's useful one way or another. So we did some variant prediction. But my impression so far is that you really have to think about different architectures and how you process the data, and also the data sets far more deeply. Because, I mean, there's a really good paper from Maria Schultz, who works for Xanadu, where she's also making the point that this expectation that magically you've got a quantum machine learning network and now everything is faster and better is not necessarily the case. I mean, there might be certain problems where perhaps there could be superior performance, but in actual fact, natural, normal, classical neural networks are already very efficient. That's something we shouldn't be forgetting. So it's quite hard to beat this with quantum.
Yeah, I mean, what you said at first is, you know, like how much has the quantum layer actually contributed to it? Because like I was able to consistently, there was a model like transfer learning, and then Penny Lane took it, or a Penny Lane author took it, and then made it quantum transfer learning. And then with all these modifications, you know, the loss, you know, typically you want, you know, it's like it kept going down at a good, so basically your train performance, train loss and test loss, those two curves should go down simultaneously. If your train one keeps going down sharply, that's overfitting. And you especially see that if your test or val, you know, that loss starts going up. So I've seen kind of a lot of it. I put in something for the chat with you because the transfer learning, this one by Stanford, they did two things. They did it like, it's like change the weights of the, you know, classical neural network, which is normal, fine tune it. And the other one is fix it. And then, so I had 4 models to compare against. I compared that one, the 2 Stanford ones. I tried to do a vision transformer, which is similar to, you know, it's a transformer like BERT is.
Mhm.
And then the quantum one. And then the quantum one was always slowest, but that was kind of like my synopsis with it. Like I have good quantum algorithms to use that, you know, very basic, that I can do this much data with, and then go up a little bit on some of the layers too. And it just seems like that, like, you know, without having a lot more quantum parameters, or without having like a different quantum architecture, you know, it just didn't seem like it was getting over that hurdle, like to come up to the effect of the classical neural net, the ResNet.
Oh yeah, it's comparable, but it's certainly not better. And actually mentioning overfitting, because I tried different qubit settings, very small numbers, because I'm obviously classically simulating it. So currently 4 and 8 qubits, and the layer depths of 12 for the, and actually you can have overfitting. So actually the accuracy can drop with more qubits, which was quite interesting as well. So a lot of things have come out of it, which I didn't really expect. So it's a bit hit and miss. Sometimes it does a little bit better than the classical, but most of the time it's comparable. And the comparison I'm doing here is a little bit unfair. Basically, I'm freezing all the layers for the transformer, and then only the quantum layer is doing the prediction. And I'm comparing this against fine-tuning the whole transformer stack, which actually gives the transformer stack an advantage. So at least we're having a sort of very similar figures. The other thing I probably will do is just put a normal regression layer, sort of linear layer, to compare this with the quantum layer, which is already built into the model. I just have to run some tests.
Yeah, and
you never know what surprises you get. It could be that the normal regression layer might not be a lot worse than the quantum layer, because it's a pre-trained network. That's the thing. And I think the pre-training kind of limits what you can get out of it.
yeah, and I think that's kind of normal as far as like fixing the classical layer, and then, you know, the quantum circuit gets optimized over the course of the run. But, I think that if you could prove that, I got mostly errors when I tried to do that. And it's going to be more RAM consuming and all that kind of stuff. But if you can do those two and you can prove that the quantum circuit is helping while we're still in this era of like kind of first era with, getting things awesome with simulators, that I think that's valid too. But there might be complexities beyond that. I haven't
think
heard of
that's the case. I think it's to do a lot with the network, the actual classical network, the pre-training, as well as the data set. Because the reference data set I'm using, which is really interesting, you get very different results basically, and it's different. We have mouse, we have human, we have all these, and some of the data sets perform very poorly, and they also perform poorly if you do the same with the quantum layer, and you get but all the results are fairly comparable, classical to quantum, so it's not way off.
Yeah, and before we switch over here, Maria Scholl did a recent study. It's this whole contextuality. It's a new demo on Penny Lane's website, and it's basically creating a new algorithm based on the data set. So, fine-tuning everything, based on every time you change it. And then there was a couple other papers, because you had mentioned, freezing. They do, dropout studies, with, they'll set percent dropout with the quantum neural network. And then they'll also there's a feature, shot adaptive optimizer, or no, it's just adaptive optimizer for Penny Lane. And you can change the number of layers throughout the course of the run in theory. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's QiML adaptive optimizer. So for that one.
Yeah, it's a challenge. The challenge is also to get those things to work together, because I mean, obviously we have been very closely following what Penny Lane has been doing, and basically just sort of use that as our template for working with the BERT transformer model. But it's quite complicated because there's so much happening under the hood, and if you think it's quite easy to get for things to go wrong, as well as there are lots of problems with the libraries. If you're not careful, you get lots of sort of errors because some libraries are not compatible. So that in itself took forever, just making sure you have the right libraries.
Yeah, I would say so too. Anything else, Brent?
No, that's it. And once I have a chance, I'll present my data. I mean, that'll be not immediately, towards the end of the year.
Yeah, very cool.
That I would be very interested in seeing what you've been up to, Dr. Ra. And if I could ask a quick question, can you just summarize what BERT or BERT2, what sort of problems they solve or predictions they made? Because
yeah, I'm trying to. BERT2 is basically a better version of BERT1. First of all, the way the data are being encoded is different. The tokenization mechanism is a different one. They use a totally different technique. That in itself is an advantage. And secondly, which is really handy for us, it comes with a reference data set, which is already sort of various bits of genomic data. And the idea is that people then can use it for their own machine learning models to compare. And that's exactly what I've done, basically, by loading all those data. They call it the GOE data set. And so that's helpful.
And then, so there's a question. If you had it on GitHub, Bren.
Yeah, it's still currently it's in the stealth mode, basically. So once we're happy with it, we will make it public.
So again, my question is what sort of predictions does BERT2 make? As far as
it's up to you, because so because BERT is obviously all the transformer models when they are pre-trained, that's a form of unsupervised or self-supervised learning. You see, if you I know it's over a year ago, but basically 15% of the information is covered up, and then the transformer has to predict the missing information. It's a bit like when you're typing a word and you think about what's missing, and that's how all the pre-training takes place. And then the classification is up to you what you want to use it for, because you're then training it for a specific question. For example, we trained it for to let it distinguish between pathogenic and non-pathogenic variants. But it really depends on you. You could train it on any problem you like, really.
No, okay. The reason I was asking, because myself and some other colleagues have been looking at pure quantum algorithms to assist with things like sample matching or sample comparisons.
Mhm.
So I wonder if that's something that BERT2 is also able to do, or
What type of sample?
like if you have two, you have a you have a reference sample, and then another sample comes in, and you want to get a score for how closely matched they are, or how far apart they are, or like a
Yeah, I think
distance measure.
I believe you can do this, because someone
Okay.
did this for COVID, basically, where you had to predict, I think, whether it's a COVID virus or not. So you could use it. Yeah, you can certainly do this. It just
Okay,
depends
all
how you're training it.
right,
Yeah,
sounds
and
good.
I think there was a question. So DWAL, there's GitHub. So you could, BERT QTL. The quantum transfer learning model is probably, I mean, out of everything from Penny Lane, that these demos have, it's probably the most used, just because it's really cool, because you get ResNet plus a quantum algorithm, classification, and you can make a ton of modifications beyond just ResNet 18 to 950 and these types of things. And you can increase classes from 2 to, I went to 44. So yeah, GitHub has a fair amount of this, especially when that came out, the quantum transfer learning, and then, BERT quantum algorithm, BERT quantum computing, that type of stuff. I have asked these types of questions to Penny Lane on discussion forum before, as far as like the advantage.
Yeah, I saw this. I saw all your postings.
Yeah, advantage with performances and
Yeah.
not even speed, because simulated. And they pretty much said that we're not at that stage yet. And for me, I'm thinking like, well, we still have gate model algorithms, and we also need to know more about big data sets with quantum algorithms. And they said, yeah, that's pretty much the case. There's a handful of cases. There's there's a Google experiment with data. It's basically there where quantum has an advantage with this, I forget what it is, but like they said that was the case. And it seemed like it was one of those things, like with quantum advantage with hardware, like very specific. But adoption into a field like medical will only happen when there's broad when people are getting 3% better, and you're already in the 90s with accuracies and those types of things. Or it's just a brand new utility. It's just like, hey, why don't we use this for medical data? But it won't happen just with like how it is right now, right? The current algorithm architecture, our understanding with data, with quantum algorithms, it won't move into a field. Like deep learning will not recognize it unless it's broad.
No, because we don't have enough qubits. I mean, we don't have enough logical qubits to start with. I mean, obviously, if we had lots of qubits, it probably would be extremely noisy. So for medical machine learning, you need lots of qubits, because you have lots of data. You can't just compress it extremely. And basically, the reason that we are using transformers and then just have a quantum layer is that effectively you're compressing the data. You have, I think, nearly 600 data points, and you just basically just compress it to 4. You have your 4 qubits. I mean, sorry, to 2 to the power of 4. So, which is a much smaller number. But actually, if you wanted to process these data from scratch without a classical transformer, you would have a real problem, because you just have too many data, and you can't just compress them in a way that the quantum network could process this.
Yeah, I don't know if I completely, follow that, because it seems like, say for instance, data re-uploading, we're trying to minimize it to 1 or 2 qubits in order to do like a full classification with qubits. And this can all be done, on quantum simulators. So that I think quantum will start really making an entrance on the efficient ones, like limited qubits. It maps data in a way that's, across the Hilbert space in a different way with quantum interference that's not being done classically. But I think that's will be kind of the introduction, is like a lot of people are getting great results on smaller quantum circuits. I don't think it's going to need to have, dozens and dozens of qubits.
I think it depends on your data set, but yeah, I mean, but certainly when you use smaller data sets, then obviously you have the processing power, because then it's easier to simulate classically or even run it on a real quantum computer.
Yeah, I mean, for this quantum transfer learning model that a lot of people use, you're supposed to have, so they use a 4-qubit circuit for 2 classes. And then it's the same thing. If I want 10 classes, I need 20 qubits. And if I use 44 classes, I'm supposed to have 88. Well, I never got to 88, but I did the best I could with it. And it just, worked, and possibly a little bit better than the equivalent transfer learning model. But yeah, there's certain cases as far as like, feature mapping and like, how the data looks like coming in, and, your optimal performance is based on certain ratios between qubits and classes. So yeah, it just depends, but there's, there's some models that, limited in qubits, and, we just need to, get the performance up. But a single qubit has a ton of information, right? So, when you simulate a qubit, and this is why there's so much RAM that's needed once you get up to like, we're pretty much up to 30, with like Penny Lane, NVIDIA, GPU, multi-GPU. But there's a lot of information in that. And I think the experts would say that we're not nearly at that level with the data set understanding and the amount of information we can hold with a single qubit. It's just like, turns of a qubit, and then all of a sudden this algorithm's better than that one.
Yeah, you might be right. It might be a case of just having maybe completely new algorithms and the way we're pre-processing the data. I think these are the big questions. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and like you said, like Maria Scholl and these like Seth Lloyd, it's hard to say because they've done a lot with feature embedding and feature extraction and all these types of things. Now, Seth at MIT can map data if it's just 2 dots perfectly on either side. If it's something like the quantum transfer, or if it's something like ANSB's, PyTorch, that data set, they can do that a little bit harder. But you have to see their follow-up papers, because sometimes they don't include everything, right? Because they're not going to say like, well, we kind of push this to the limit, now we're going to start over something else. So that's where, you have to contact the authors and just like in efficient and polite ways say like, oh, I want to, you can say, oh, I want to start this awesome, like, feature extraction and data set mapping on a qubit. And they might lead you into a different area. It's hard to tell. But that stuff was looking very promising, and they tried to train the embedding and all this stuff, and they thought it was going to confuse people. And they put that on the forum. So, but yeah, following the people that, have gone to school for this, for these specific reasons, what they're actually publishing, that's a good approach in my estimation. And then Ron, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm looking at QEra's sites. They are now claiming that their Aquila 256 qubit neutral atom machine is now online and accessible via Amazon Braket.
Okay.
That's amazing. That is amazing. That's going to I've been a big advocate of neutral atoms because they have the lowest noise coefficients and the longest coherence, or probably in this, at least in the same market or same neighborhood as trapped ions, but trapped ions are suffering from the register width issue, and here QAra's got a 256 qubit machine, and I just recently saw a thing from Atom Computing. They are committing to 1,000 qubit neutral atom machine to come online by early 2025.
Yeah.
So these things, if they, I'm going to start looking into, their performance numbers, but this is very quickly going to
Yeah, and
put an
definitely
end to the simulators.
because these will come across my inbox too. If it starts talking about like machine learning workflows, I'd be interested. But like, the big problems are great, and it's like, we've never solved these types of things. Huge feat for quantum computing. Everybody follows this across the world. Like I said, I'm more interested in like the day-to-day, workflows that we could use quantum algorithms without having to use
Yeah.
quantum computers. So yeah,
So,
if it says that type of
if this
stuff,
is if this is available on Amazon's Briquette, then things like Kubeflow, for cloud orchestration, should probably be able to probably have an adapter for that. On their site, they are listing machine learning solutions, optimization solutions. So they may be a little bit behind. I mean, Penny Lane's been around for so long, and D-Wave's been around for so long. They have a nice front end and a nice IDE and infrastructure on the front, but this is going to start to be a game changer. So like I said, I'm going to look into the parameter, or into the actual running statistics, to see if they're as good as they should be at this size, and
yeah,
their volume should be off the scale.
yeah. Because like the whole thing fueling this, I mean, especially with QML, is like it's the principal application. And then they said like $5 billion by the end of this decade, for QML, which is theoretically just going to be software at this point. But it's interesting because like if they could start, and I saw the Atom one too. If they say like, okay, for a big problem, say, I don't know if you saw the Quantinium, like the 32 qubit gigahertz state. I think that was just running it, right? Like this maximally entangled, but 32 qubit. If they have stuff like when it's just like, okay, this problem, but I just see a clear separator between all the quantum hardware and the software, using QiML, quantum algorithms, existing workflows. Penny Lane has a very, mesh. I don't know if that's
well, I mean, Quantinium and IonQ, they're struggling to get beyond 24 qubits. It has to do with their technology. IBM keeps cranking up their qubit count, but it's dependent on fixed qubits and their double hex network, which the bigger you make the network, the more swap gates you need. The more swap gates, the more noise you get, all that crap. So
yeah.
I'm still going with neutral atoms, and David DiVincenzo, the creator of the qubit, he created the nomenclature for what defines a qubit. He's put his money on neutral atoms also.
Yeah, I think it's
the qubits.
Yeah, I think it's all interesting. It's just, at this point, if I were to go any conference, it'd probably be the QML, and then big problem's awesome, but like I still don't see it yet where it's just like, these big announcements and hardware is just like, whoa, like quantum volume is like so much higher than it was in the previous one. But as far as solving problems and these types of things. But any other last questions? I appreciate everybody coming on. So probably next week a little bit more quantum, and this week and the past week have been FDA, a little bit more regulatory, but it'll be interesting. So feel free to check the chat. Oh, go ahead, Dewalt.
I did post a question there. I'm gonna just read it out. So do we have any research on power consumption or energy efficiency while we are doing QML or QiML? versus doing it classically, say a supercomputer, HPC, and is QiML hybrid, or are we trying to work on algorithms which are purely quantum?
I think that the most appropriate use of the term hybrid means a CPU and a GPU. Okay. So people will still say hybrid, even if you're using classical generating, classical processing with classical algorithms and quantum algorithms, which is QiML. So, these terms are just going to be thrown around like that. They just are. And
Yeah, and I don't think the platform manufacturers like IBM or any of these guys are really anxious to go out there and tell you how many kilowatts of energy they are burning to keep superconducting qubits at millikelvin. They just avoid the whole thing. So if you find a way to find out that information, you could probably answer your question.
yeah,
But I've never seen it.
I put in a pretty decent study. So this was two different, how does this work? So NVIDIA A100 and a V100, CPU and a TPU. And then it was, let's see, quantum transfer learning and transfer learning, and then a small class, like a 2 class and a 44 class. And you can see in the results. So basically, it's basically broken down by time. So if you have what Google, like say Colabs, what their billing rate is, let's say for like an A100, it's $1.30 an hour. Okay, so you take that, and then you can get the cost of running, right? And from that you can get efficiency. So they're all not there yet, because like I said, I think there's a lot of inefficiencies, especially like bigger data sets, more classes, like the data is just sliding, not in ways that we don't know yet. So if your question is more towards hardware, it's just going to be more expensive for bigger setups. And Ron might know, I run on like 7-qubit IBMs, that type of stuff. So mine is more like the GPU quantum simulator. That's the study that I did. Awesome. Any other last questions? Yeah, go ahead, Han.
Thanks, Kevin. I come from Switzerland, so actually I have a question about annealing computer. It's turned out to be that in some scientists in European university doesn't have, they don't have most phase in quantum annealing. They refer gate-based quantum computer. What is your view on that?
Well, it's the same way. I gave a talk on optimizers and loss functions, say 3-4 weeks ago. And this one described it like you can have an exhaustive search, or you can have, there's something that's more annealing, simulated annealing or quantum annealing. And then you can have something that's faster, which is like a traditional optimizer route. And I think it just depends on the problem. You could look at D-Wave's website. It's typically, it's finding local minimums, but in a better way, in a more exhaustive way than an optimizer would, like Atom Optimizer or, Cobala, those types of things. So if the problem is to find, optimized solutions, then, you can use annealers. Now, for a physical annealer, it still has noise. It just not as much as a IBM quantum computer, because it's just for like optimization techniques. Fujitsu has a software-based annealer with less qubits, but it's 100% noise free. And that would be interesting. I don't really come across, and I don't look for specifically. But yeah, you have a software-based annealer, Fujitsu. You have D-Wave is a big one too, but they're just for like optimizing problems, like local minimums. They're not for every problem. So it's, it doesn't really replace, IBM's quantum system, that type of stuff.
So like D-Wave, D-Wave doesn't, their annealer aren't based on complete qubits. They don't function as qubits, but they have enough quantum phenomena capability to do the annealing process, which as Kevin just said, they're really focused on optimization solutions that just need those particular parameters. They're not gate based, so you can't run normal quantum circuits. But D-Wave is killing it in the optimization world. Seems like between D-Wave and Penny Lane, that's where the optimization work is going.
Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
it seems. And did you have anything else, Han?
Yes, thing is, I have very specific problem, and I wonder if you guys have any experience on it. Actually, I try to build a software for portfolio optimization, meaning try to find a group of assets based on their risk and return, right? It's super basic. The thing is, we cannot have an optimal algorithm to calculate the Sharpe ratio. And I mean, we just can run with maybe 5 assets, but we cannot scale it up to a portfolio of 50 assets. So yeah, we have a scaling problem in our algorithm. So I wonder if you guys has any experience with that.
I mean, even if I saw it, I might not know. It's something that I haven't got into in depth.
Okay. Are you familiar with Grover Adaptive Search?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, we are also going to that direction, and so the problem that we cannot do it, just we cannot really calculate the Sharpe ratio. I can type it here for you, which is quite popular in finance. Sharpe ratio. Yeah. So but yeah. Anyway, so it's all right, guys. Thanks a lot. But just I want to, Kevin, your background is in medical Q device, Q quantum device.
No, I have had to learn, a lot of the FDA. I've had to learn a lot of, just the basics of neuroimaging, multimodal data, federated learning, all these types of things. So yeah, I have to read. My story is I was working as a scientist in industry, and then during the pandemic, we were deemed essential because the life sciences and pharma division of the building was deemed essential. And then so I said I for sure want to do medical, the rest of my life, like as far as being like a safe field to be in. And then the other thing is like I'd read some machine learning stuff, and it just seemed like it was getting better, and like over the course of time, the better accuracy versus top scientists. So it's just a matter of time until a lot of this gets more fully implemented, with classical and quantum and these types of things across, like it's the norm, like you're just using AI. Many small hospitals don't use a ton of AI, and divisions and these types of things, but the leading hospitals like Boston or Boston area hospitals, they might use something like 50 FDA approvals, on a routine basis. So, the ones that are associated, like the Epic medical systems, those are the ones, the bigger hospitals, those are the ones that trend to use, more of the FDA approved, machine learning approaches.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll hear this, you'll say, like all hospital is slow. I don't believe in that. I really don't. There's certain, say for instance, if Epic goes after the big hospital systems, and they already have, like here in San Diego, and they have, just different parts of the world in New York and the Bay Area and those types, is just like, they're aware, of these tools, and it's a strategic advantage. If you go to a big hospital, you're more likely to get better, scans, these types of things, because they're using more advanced forms of AI, and others may not even use it. So
Interesting.
So as far as to try to address your question here, was this more Qiskit or Penny Lane, or you said, is it annealing only, or?
Well, I think it's, how can I say it? Yeah, Kiss. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think Kiss have any algorithm that's available to solve that issue. Exactly, you are right. Kiss is not available, or maybe we're not able to to search for the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, you want to wind up in those types of things because, I mean, the question is just a little bit too specific for me. And without knowing, more information, you said sharp ratio, these types of things. But I ask questions all the time in Penny Lane, and some of them are just like, I don't see this industry going really any faster, much farther in a short period of time, right? And they could be focused, maybe, I don't know, but like their whole platform looks like to use this QiML approach, and you don't know. So the questions that you ask can change the direction of the industry, really. Because like for medical, there's none of this. Like we can't do quantum noise, we can't do superconductor, we can't do ion trap, we can't do, any of these other ones that are emerging. We have existing technology. So,
I see. Well, I have one question though. I don't know if you're familiar with how the technology transfer from the US to EU. I would assume if you have the FDA approval, then it's super valid, super legit, and then it will be really, really good condition to scale it up. But if you would do that, would you face some regulatory constraint from EU side?
Well, I think the governing body is actually IMDRF, and then International Medical Device Regulators Forum. So the FDA works with them, and it sounds like some of this stuff existed and FDA adopted it or worked with IMDRF. I don't bring it up enough just because like it'll pop up a little bit, and then I don't have any information as far as like, the exact relationship between IMDRF and FDA. Not as familiar with Europe or other countries.
My understanding, stuff in Europe and the UA is even more restrictive than what goes on here in the FDA. I just heard somebody making a comparison about that where they made this ugly comparison. Here in the US, the FDA waits until people die before it acts. And in the European Union, people have to prove things are safe much harder before they get the approval. So it's hard to say what that transfer would be. Also, there's so much stuff in the Qiskit land. There's also the Qiskit. If you go to their website and connect to the Qiskit Slack channel, people can answer questions. I know there's stuff there on Grover's searches, and be surprised if there isn't stuff there on adaptive searches. I was talking about doing pure quantum algorithms for DNA matching. We're actually looking at a variation of Grover's to do stuff like that. So have fun. I got to step out, Kevin. This is great.
Yeah.
I hope you heal up, brother.
Appreciate it.
I hope you do well.
Yeah. Yeah, I too. I like going to other people's discussions too, but I would say it's just been a little bit of cutback with other quantum, computing meetups. But it's fun to have them and then go to them. And obviously mine's at times like this is like medical plus policymaking, those types of things. So, but yeah, appreciate everybody coming on. So this has been, let's see.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Kevin, can you hear?
So thank you so much, Kevin. It's
Yeah.
very great. I'm gonna read up your profiles and then I will see for any further exchange in the future, because I really find your education is very helpful for me. I'm new in the field, so whatever you teach is very useful for me. Much
Awesome.
appreciated.
Yeah, appreciate everybody coming on. This has been discussion 106, Thursday, October 26, 2023, for another FDA talk. Have a good rest of the night, everybody, and have a productive rest of the week. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Ciao.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.